and does his magnetic draw. And from the looks of things, he didn't really get much to work with. Plays Reshiram. And I think at this point, it's tough for him because he's probably going to have to retreat the Magnemite. He can't Rare Candy it into a new Magnezone, but if he just leads with Magnezone, then he runs the risk of just being stuck and not knowing what to do if he doesn't get enough energy in play. So he does play the Fisherman to get a lot back, and he decides to put up Reshiram. Once again, I think the best attacker for this situation is just leading with the Magnezone, and even though I can knock out the Magnezone with my Zekrom on my turn, which is something that he definitely fears, attacking with Reshiram kind of just is stalling the inevitable. He can't take prizes while he's just putting damage on my field for me to put wherever I want. And Magnezone's really the only way that he's going to be able to take knockouts this game, other than Rayquaza Deoxys Legend. But again, this is just a problem that you can run into when you play a deck that you've never seen before. The strategy is pretty complex, and it's hard to determine the best way to deal with it. I play another Sage's Training, look at my top 5. Discard a Solosis, I don't need another one anymore. Discard a Twins and a Collector. I already have a full field of basics, don't need any more of those. And I'm in the lead by 2 prizes, so I probably won't be playing Twins until much later in the game. Attach a double to the Zekrom. And I start moving all that damage away from Donphan. I move it all to the Vileplume. Because he doesn't run any way. Well, at this point I'm trainer locking, so he has no way to bring up Vileplume and damage it. So even though he's just 10 damage away from a knockout, he won't be able to touch him. And I hit his Reshiram for another solid 90. Carver plays a Collector, and at this point I think he's just trying to thin the deck because Collector really isn't a very strong supporter once you've already set up. And he's just trying to get his way into a new hand with Cleffa later. And that's about it. That's about all he can do right now to work with what he's got. Magnezone is his only way to take knockouts, and he's afraid that if he brings up his Magnezone early and I knock it out right away with Zekrom, then he's not really going to have any draw or any way to have any late game. So he is in a pretty tight spot. I got everything out by like turn 3 and moving into turn 4. I took the first prizes. He didn't get early energy attachments, so he is in a tough spot right away. Going first in this format also helps a lot. So he attaches to the Reshiram from his hand. Magnetic draws. And there, see a rare candy that he has. And given any other scenario, he'd normally be able to get another Magnezone out right now, but Vileplume's Allergy Flower Pokebody prevents all trainer items from being played. So he's got things like Junk Arm and Rare Candy in his hand that he really wants to play, but he just can't. Decides to retreat for Cleffa and eke for a new hand. It really is his best strategy at this point because he's running slow, he needs to catch back up, he needs more energy in play, he needs a way to get Magneton and Magnezone, and on a flip, he could potentially block me from taking a prize with Cleffa, giving him a little bit more time to work with. He shuffles up his deck a lot to make sure his energy isn't clumping anymore, and flips for sleep. Unfortunately, stays awake, and draws a good amount of trainers, but a few supports that'll definitely work. I draw for my turn, and I play yet another Sage's Training. Look at my 5, I see those 2 energy, and I think that's all I want to keep. I discard the Chansey, Oddish and Gloom. I don't need the extra Oddish and Gloom, and I decide that I probably have enough damage capacity to hold over, and I don't need to heal everything with Blissey Prime. And I take the knockout on his Cleffa. So this now puts me up 3 prizes to his none taken, which is a huge lead. He realizes at this point that he has to promote Magnezone, otherwise he's going to fall way too far behind. And he just starts working that way. He attaches Rescue Energy, which, as I said earlier, is actually a pretty good play against Trainer Lock. Normally, he wouldn't be able to get other Magnezones out pretty quickly after one would be knocked out because of the Trainer Lock. He can't rare candy right away, but with Rescue Energy, if I do knock out his Magnezone and he plays a Magneton now, he'll have that Magnezone to bounce right back to his hand after a knockout. So one of those cards he takes is shown as a Magneton. The second card, I didn't know what he took, but I can see it now that it's on the camera. And he's struggling because he doesn't really know what to take. He takes a Fire. It's just another energy for him to attach with his unlimited fire attachments. And it gives him at least enough energy spread around for his Magnezones to take big knockouts. He plays Magneton and attaches to it with Inferno Fandango, which is the very silly name of Embor's ability. Magnetic draws for 1. And now his hand is just clumped up with a lot of trainer item cards and supporter cards. He can't really play anything else, and he has to Lost Burn. Now, because of Donphan's body, which prevents 20 damage for an attack, and his lightning's resistance, Carver has to throw 4 energy in play to knock me out, which definitely does hurt because he doesn't have very many energy or very many ways to get more. And he decides to leave the rescue on his active, that way he can get the Magnezone back if I take a knockout on my turn. Now, I wait a little bit, look at my hand, and I Copycat. He has a large hand size, so I decide that that's my best way to draw. I have energy in my hand, but it's kind of useless because I don't have any other attackers to work with, other than the Zekrom, who in this deck is pretty much fully charged, despite the fact that most Zekrom heavy decks like to use the attack Bolt Strike. In this deck, you're almost exclusively using Outrage, which is just 20 damage plus 10 more for each damage counter on you. Because you're already moving damage counters, you can deal more damage than Bolt Strike with Outrage most of the time, and that's what I'm going to be doing on this turn. I draw a pretty big hand, I think it's 7. And look at what I've got. I see another Phanpy, which I think I'll probably play. The deck runs a 2-2, and it's a strong attacker against David's deck. And I attach to it right away. Magnezone's fighting weakness makes Donphan a pretty good attacker. Unfortunately, my Donphan is gone, but I can still knock out his Magnezone by moving a few damage counters to put Zekrom 10 damage away from being knocked out. And I can hit him for a full 140. So now my Zekrom has 120 damage on me, and I can Outrage to deal 140 and knock out his Magnezone for 1 energy. So I knock him out, his Magnezone pieces go back to his hand because of the rescue energy, and I now have a pretty impressive lead of 2 prizes left to Carver's 5. Carver's debating. He knows that Magnezone's a better attacker right now in this situation, but with Zekrom active and just 10 damage left, it's kind of a waste to throw one of his energy with a Lost Burn, so he doesn't know if he wants Reshiram or Magnezone up here. He considers putting a Tepig up, which could knock me out on a coin flip, but changes his mind, decides he's just going to go with Reshiram for the safe knockout with 2 damage, or 2 energy on him to do his own Outrage. He evolves to the Magnezone, plays Magnemite on the bench, starts counting the amount of energy he's got. He's got 4 right now in the Lost Zone, another 5 in the discard pile, and while the deck does run 15 energy, he is starting to run a little low. He already played the Fisherman also to get 4 energy back from the discard pile, and his energy retrievals are now useless because he's going to be trainer locked for the whole game. So he definitely has to be careful with his energy attachments, which is why he decided to bring up Reshiram. He can attack for 2 energy without discarding anything, and if for some reason I don't have a Donphan out, he can at least take a few prizes while I try and bide my time and get new attackers. Plays Professor Oak's New Theory to get another 6 cards. And he draws his 6. See, one half of the Rayquaza Deoxys Legend, but at this point Carver knows it's been kind of late to try and get that attacker out. And he discards his supporter and actually whiffs on the fire energy that he needed to knock me out, which is pretty huge. It definitely leaves him almost entirely out of the game, because now I can take an easy prize with my Zekrom, and then all I need is just one more. Even if he does take the knockout, it is pretty difficult for him, but it definitely gives me more time to work with. And after another Sage's training and trying the exclusive Tropical Beach card from Worlds, even though I don't play it, I'm in a really good spot. I don't have the Donphan, but I do a kind of neat move here. And that is realizing that Zekrom can hit for 140 damage. I have a double colorless energy in my hand, and I know that I can get a knockout really easily against his entire field. I know that he can't snipe me even though I only have 10 HP left, so I decide to knock out Reshiram in a different way. I move a couple of counters around. At first I didn't see it, but I decide to move everything down as much as I have to on the Zekrom. And then I realize that if I move things down and put 4 on Phanpy, I can actually just take an easy prize with him to knock out his Reshiram, while still being able to save up that Zekrom for my last prize. I already have another double colorless in my hand. And Phanpy's attack, Flail, does 10 damage times the amount of damage counters that you already have on you. So I retreat my Zekrom, move up Phanpy, and Flail for the knockout. And this pretty much secures the game for me. I have 1 prize left. Zekrom, on my turn, I can move all my damage counters to him and hit for 140 damage, and he can't really do anything to stop that. However, just Lost burns the energy to knock me out. He already knows the game is over. But I draw, attach my double colorless, move the damage to him, and for a moment here, I think I struggle with the math. I know I can move it all, but I try and do it just to show you guys the technicality. I know it's just adding and subtracting, but for some reason this was really hard for me. Eventually I've got it. I've got 120 on me, and I knock out his Magnezone for 140. So yeah, that's this full game. Just thought it'd be really fun to, at first, just show you guys the lists of our top 2 players in Masters at the end of the world this year. And also just give you guys a nice glimpse into how both of the decks work and how they played against each other at Worlds. Now, one thing I do apologize for is I tried to get a second game in, and the camera died about halfway through that game, which doesn't really make for a good game. I can play it halfway through, and then I have to explain the rest, but I will briefly say that Carver definitely caught more onto the deck, attacked more with Magnezone, and got Rayquaza Deoxys Legend out this game. I also got some of the more interesting cards out of the deck, like Suicune Entei Legend and the Tropical Beach. The Suicune Entei Legend was great in the late game when he no longer could attack with Magnezone, and he couldn't knock me out with his Rayquaza Deoxys Legend. And I was able to just barely squeak by, but it was a very close game. I think it went down to 1 prize to 1 prize. So it definitely shows that this deck is much stronger when your opponent doesn't know your strategy and doesn't really know how to get their way around to beating you. But once you work a little bit more, it definitely becomes a little bit more known, and it's easier to beat when you have a deck like Magnabore, which can actually knock out Pokemon instead of leaving damage on the field for you to move around with Reuniclus. Anyways, thanks for listening to my commentary. Thanks for watching this game, and tune in for another one on Sunday. Peace.